Hey everyone, Ink here, and I'm going to be walking you through my solo of Dimensions End Entropy Tier 9 with Shadow. So anyone that is a follower of mine knows my intense love of FF6. Shadow is no exception. He is my favorite unit that I've pulled since Sabin himself. I love using both him and now Interceptor in battle, so this was an incredibly fun run for me. But this run will not be fun for all people because it has a very heavy reliance on RNG. And so Shadow's mechanic is that he counters whenever he dodges an attack. However, it's percentage based. And so it means that if sometimes Shadow just won't dodge, and that does mean that you will tank HP attacks and you will need to reset the wave. So I spent 45 plus resets in this tier with Shadow soloing. So while you're going to see my successful Stitch Together run, just note that it definitely took a lot of patience to get it. But as a lover of Shadow, I did not mind at all. So it's really up to the runner if you want to do this. But I do think that this is a great example of a recent character running a recent entropy stage, right? This isn't an early entropy stage or anything like that. This is you probably used some purples here, so getting to use just one character, locking them here is, I think, a great option. And I will link more Shadow solos if you're interested in using him in a different level. He can run many levels solo, which is great. But again, they're very RNG dependent. So before we get into the strategy and gameplay, let's just go over his setup. So no need to remove any of his level or crystal passives, they're all fine. Board passives, you want to make sure that you have Shiva evasion up and Ramu evasion up. These both provide 10% when he's above or below 80% HP, bumping Shadow's base evasion with his buff to 70%. And you need every percent you can get. So those are really important. Otherwise, just the standard ones on Shadow are fine. For equipment, you want to make sure that you've got Shadow's Bloomstone. It gives him 2 extra uses of his additional ability, and these guarantee evasion with 100%. And so when you're facing enemies that are very fast or have a lot of turns queued up, it's a perfect time to use his AA because you know that he'll dodge all of their attacks and counter them. So very useful to have that. Otherwise, this is all standard MLB. And for artifacts, really you just need 3 108s. That's a requirement, the minimum. I think any Max Brave that you can add is great. I do think Wild Throws and Shadow Stealths are also good. Wild Throw is much more preferred because it has a lot of hits, and Interceptor's follow-up triggers uses that. So it'll, whenever you use Wild Throw, the Mighty will affect Interceptor as well, which is really nice. So yeah, just pick whichever ones are best for you, but make sure you've got 3 108s. Looking at spheres, spheres are never required. I gave Shadow a sphere, but it's not at all needed, so please don't stress that you have to apply spheres. They are absolutely optional. As for summon, I decided to bring Alexander. Alexander gives you 1 get out of jail free card. Basically, will heal you 45% of your HP over the course of 3 turns. And the reason that that's really helpful is that it'll bump your HP back up above the enemy's eye brave. So if an enemy recovers from break on its turn, you hopefully won't get HP attacked right away. And you want to limit the number of HP attacks that you take in this run as much as possible. And that's a great way to do it. It gives you just a little bit more flexibility. Some people did use Ifrit. Ifrit means, though, that you're basically trying to run it perfect and not take any hits, because as soon as you take an HP hit, you lose its blessing and it's doing nothing. It does give you 1 extra turn in summon versus Alexander. That certainly is relevant. But outside of that, you're really gunning for a great RNG run, which is tricky. I probably 20 plus of my 45 resets or so, I couldn't even get past the first wave with Ifrit. It was very frustrating. So And then don't use Shiva. Shiva raises his speed and it messes with EX charge rates. I do not recommend Shiva at all for any solos generally. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into the gameplay. It's been sped up 2x just because it was over 30 minutes long. So I hope you all enjoy the run and the commentary and strategy of it.
All right, so for Shadow's opening routine here, getting started, you've got 6 turns on your Interceptor buff, and you've got 6 turns on your Shadow, your Fade to Black, your Evasion buff, and so you need to make sure that you refresh both of those. I will say that that enemy just did a drain. If you get hit by that drain, just reset. Because the drain is not strong enough to drop you under 50%, means Alexander's Blessing won't trigger. And then it's just a waste of having Alexander as your summon. So here you can see I've got 1 turn left on my framed buff now. I've got 2 turns on Interceptor. So it makes perfect sense to make sure I've got to use Shadow Stealth here. And even better to shave an enemy. That's a good use of a skill when you need to shave. And in this first routine, to get this EX charged perfectly, what I am doing is, 1, I'm breaking out of order whenever possible to give the enemy more turns so that my EX charges a little bit on their turns. So to do that, 3 HP plus in your opening routine into, you want to use 1 wild card and 1 Shadow Stealth. And Shadow Stealth in general should only be used when it has 1 turn left. It's directly tied to Shadow's longevity. So you certainly can get by using 1 here or there. There are a couple instances that I'll get into in the next wave when you want to use Shadow Stealth when you have 2 turns left. But otherwise, really what you're doing here is you're making sure to keep enemies shaved is the primary focus. You can see I'm attacking A there just to keep them out of order. These knights, outside of their drain attack, you know, they could have you in purple, right, where they're going to kill you, and they'll still brave attack. So they're actually not as deadly as the Berserker armor, but you want to keep all 3 of them alive as long as possible, because Shadow's actively dealing, really, Interceptor is dealing more damage the more times they attack and miss. So the most important dodges to get, of course, are the ones where there's an HP attack, because it means you don't have to shave the enemy. They dump their brave, they miss you, and then you can take them down. Also keep in mind, you're going to want to look at how much Shadow's HP plus does in non-crit. So if the enemy is not broken, how much damage will the HP plus deal? And you'll see that right here on the Berserker armor that I'm dealing just about 4,400, dodging all the HP attacks thus far, which is great. Definitely gonna have to do it again right here. Your heart stops at those times, but you can see generally using Shadow Stealth when you're at 1 turn left on the frame buff. You can use Wild Throw when you have 1 turn left on your max brave buff, but you don't have to worry as much about that. I will use wild card when, you know, my HP plus is dealing about 8,800, 8,700 brave non-crit, and so that's how much I can shave. So if an enemy goes above, let's say probably about 15,000, I'm definitely going to use a wild throw there. You really want to. So you can see it wasn't really a problem to here to just keep him alive. That was my 1 brave plus of the match, and it's because I knew that I was getting targeted and I knew that my EX was going to charge. So yeah, let's move on to wave 2. Wave 2 is the easiest wave, whereas wave 1, there's a lot of variance. There's 3 enemies that you have to constantly dodge. Here, this is really about managing the Iron Worm. The giant, his AI is so easy. Right there, he broke me, right? So at 8K, you know, maybe I have to worry about him following up with some sort of attack. and he's always going to go to an all attack after he breaks you, and it's always a brave attack, and so that is considerably easier to manage. Now, one thing that you want to keep in mind that I mentioned before, the one case where you want to shadow stealth when he has 2 turns left on his framed buff is when Interceptor is also at 2. So if you get to a point where, and you can't EX, so if your EX is not ready and Interceptor's at 2 and your frame buff is at 2, you have to use it there, because if you HP plus and then you try and shadow stealth again, Interceptor will leave. If you use shadow stealth first, that gets your framed buff ready. It generally will also charge your your EX, so that you can go into your EX and keep Interceptor on. Using 1 ability and 5 skills to recharge Shadow's EX is completely fine. No problems with him recharging it and keeping it. I would think that you could probably do it even with just five skills in the first wave, because 3 enemies are going, and it's very easy. But yeah, generally you're just keeping your buffs up. You're keeping on top of keeping on top of enemies brave, keeping them shaved. Again, breaking them out of order whenever possible to give them more turns. Obviously, if you have to shave someone, then you're going to want, like right here, I don't need to use a skill. I know that I can take care of 10k brave and knock him low enough that it won't be a problem. So that's quite easy to deal with. The Iron Worm is also nice, because spoilers, when Shadow's gonna dodge, the gravity attack actually shows 0, so you know that he's gonna dodge. Lots of really nice dodges here, but just for perspective, I reset in the first wave with Alexander, because with Ifrit I barely got through the first wave. I reset over 20 times on the first wave. But with Alexander, I reset the first wave about 14 times. I reset this wave once on this run. That was it. And it's because of how easy he broke me. And instead of trying to attack me, he used another brave attack, which I dodged and shaved him. He just gives you more opportunities to dodge his attacks before he HP attacks. And so the Giant's AI is favorable to Shadow here, and you'll also notice the worm is regioning 18k, and it doesn't really matter. Yeah, so right there I had to shave a good amount and get my buff up, so it makes sense to use the Wild Throw. But otherwise, I am focusing more of my HP pluses at B, because he's refreshing 18k every turn, and his turn is 10 buffs, so he refreshes, he heals himself 180k, which it's a little bit more than Shadow's HP plus, so not really a problem. I'm trying to kill them at the same time even, and so this makes it a little bit more manageable. So I'm pointing a lot of my attacks at him. You can, if you get bored in any of these waves, you can play a game and try and inflict poison on all the enemies on the battlefield. Shadow has a 15% chance to inflict poison. So yeah, keep out for that. That's certainly fun. And really the fact that Shadow's HP plus and Interceptor both ignore defense makes this entire run possible, because it means that he can deal, even if it's a little relevant damage, consistently throughout the entire fight, even when they're in red bar. Makes it much easier. So the fact that I have gotten this far, and I have so many abilities left, 10 abilities going into this last wave now, it makes perfect sense to use there. I'm being a little bit more aggressive here because I have so many abilities. I watched someone get to this wave with 7 abilities left. I've got 10. And so it makes more sense to maximize the damage on my Shadow Stealth, on my Wild Throw and my Shadow Stealths here. and just be a little bit more aggressive, but generally, again, only using Shadow Stealth when I have 1 turn left on my frame buff. This wave this is where people say Shadow's evasion feels like 10%. It's because these guys delay you on a lot of their hits. So if they do connect with you, they're often going to get 2 or 3 more turns in a row, and they can basically try to pummel you, and it means that you have to dodge. So I just took my first HP attack of this recorded run. Obviously I took a lot while I was resetting, but this is actually a great time for me to use my AA. It's going to give me time to heal up so that no one is doing any additional HP attacks. Like if they're at 200 or 300 brave, 200 or 3,000, 2,000 or 3,000 brave, they won't hit me or try to kill me. So it makes sense to use it there, guarantee my evasion. But one thing to note on the evasion is that you only want to use his AA when he's got 4 turns left of both his framed buff and interceptor. And you have to make sure, because for 2 turns in a row, you're HP plussing. You do not use an ability after you use Shadow's AA. And it's because his HP plus does not have high turn rate. His other skills do. The EX is fine to use it while the evasion's up. That also doesn't have high turn rate. But you never want to have to use your AA and then use a Shadow Stealth. His turn will move up. Generally, it'll be right away, and you're just burning a turn. So if you can stack up, like right here, B's got 2 turns in a row. A's turns are hidden. His speed is up. This is such a good time to have your AA up, right? He would get 2 turns. My AA fell off, but whenever you see turns stacked up like that, you really need a lot of clutch dodges in this wave. These 2 enemies are definitely tough. I was lucky to have 3 uses of my AA. I would say you can use, I would save at least 2 for this wave. I think that is the most helpful. And so yeah, we're doing good. We're going to be at 5,600 HP for the rest of this fight. Alexander won't trigger again, but it got us to a safer place, at least, and that's what it was needed. And so yeah, I hope you're all enjoying the music, the FF boss music for the first 2 waves, and this music is the final battle against Kefka. Seemed appropriate for how hard this last wave is, but at least it feels like it's within reach when you get here. You just have to dodge everything. So it's certainly it's reasonable. But Dreamy did all of my music add-ins, so hope everyone is liking it. And yeah, you can see I haven't really used Brave Plus at all. The AA is really nice. B's got 2 turns here. A's got 2 turns. I'm really getting about 80k out of using my AA free damage, which is great. So I can really maximize it. Yeah, you can see, right, my 5,600 HP is not quite enough. It's less than the Shadow Male's Eye Brave. And so when he recovers from break, he will try to kill me right away. And that's what made this wave also really hard. You definitely need to... There are so many HP attacks. It makes your heart stop when you're running this, but this is a good time. They're both in red bar. Let's summon. Start to deal out the damage. I got 4 abilities left, so plan to use 2 inside of summon to help charge the EX. You can see I'm using HP pluses. Don't just spam abilities ever. Always be mindful of where your recharge is. So it's certainly something you want to keep track of. Yeah, using we're getting toward the end here. Keep track of which enemies you're attacking and how close they are to dying. I've got 1 Shadow Stealth left. My EX is going to charge right after it. B's getting 2 attacks in a row, so breaking that up at this point would be pretty nice. But I did choose to use it on A, the problem is the eye brave. So now I want to point it at A and shave him to make sure he doesn't sneak an attack on me. He's dead. Ooh, but he's not. Heart-stopping moment. But I really hope you enjoyed commentary on the solo run. Hope you learned something, and good luck trying it yourself. Take care, everyone. Have a great time with this one.